Shalom, everyone. Welcome to a new series as part of our overall Fundamentals of Kabbalah and Chassidut. Today, we are starting a whole new series, and it is based on this book called The Wandering Jew, Mystical Musings and Inspirational Insights from Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburgh. As you can see, the book is in English, and it has a very interesting story behind it. In 2010, let me just check that date. Yes, in 2010, someone gave Rabbi Ginsburgh a birthday gift. And what was the birthday gift? A Twitter account. Now, most people didn't think that Rabbi Ginsburgh would use the Twitter account, but he did. And he started posting every day. Now, if you remember, I don't know what it's like now, it's now X, but in the beginning, you were only allowed very few figures. I can't remember how many. You could only write maybe 2 or 3 sentences. Later, I think they expanded it. So anyways, Rabbi Ginsburgh began tweeting. And like they were short, very powerful, but at a certain point, it was very limiting. So someone opened up a blog account for him. And then he started not long, but more meaty ideas. And this occurred for a whole year. And then at a certain point, whatever, he moved on from that. So later, maybe just 3-4 years ago, someone went back and just took the exact tweets, the exact blogs, and organized it according to subjects. So tonight we're going to start going through the book. I haven't chosen every single one. Some lead to more discussion than others. Some are harder to explain. But I just want to read to you so you have an idea of the subjects that we will be dealing with. But before we do it, I just want to say that the book it's just really an amazing, amazing book. Anyone who has followed Rav Ginsburgh's teachings or has heard me quote him almost an infinite amount of times knows that he is a genius of genius, and his Kabbalistic and Hasidic wisdom are almost unparalleled for this generation. Yet this book there's a tremendous amount of good humor that comes through these teachings. That there's a very light touch, even when he's trying to explain very, very deep concepts. He does it in a very, very simple way, and many times we'll see almost a playful kind of language. And so, along with the deep teachings, I'm just kind of alerting everyone. When Rav Ginsburgh, let's say, teaches in Israel, almost everyone who is watching is versed in Torah. And so he just gives over the deepest depths. But here it's clear that he understands that his audience is completely different and almost like a beginner's audience. Even though there's something here for everyone. But again, I'm just trying to explain the language because I'm going to be reading these and then commenting on them. And so now I could go through. The first chapter is called God and Man. And then that is broken down, for example, living with God, creation, providence and choice, good and evil, faith, doubt, and redemption. That's the first chapter, God and Man, but those are the areas that Rav Ginsburgh will comment. The next one is called Heart and Soul. Here, the sub-chapters are healing the soul, selflessness, a good eye, male and female, he created them, tips for a better life. The next one is Torah and commandments. So here he discusses the Torah's inner dimension, commandments, question marks. Then we get to ancestors and archetypes. So he goes through Adam and Eve, Noah and his sons, Abraham and Sarah, King David, King Solomon, and the sages. Then Here and Now is the name of the chapter. And he talks about our generation, politics, Jews and Gentiles, Torah and science, war and peace. And the last chapter he calls Weird and Wonderful. And the first one is called The Fun Corner, Spiritual Anatomy, Animal Kingdom, and Unsung Heroes. So very, very quickly, these are the various kinds of subjects that Rav Ginsburgh in 2010 and 11 chose to comment on. So we're going to jump right in there. As I said, most of the book is coming from the blog, but in between there are his tweets. So the tweets are just very short and to the point. Some of them are self-obvious. Others are very thought-provoking. And then he goes back, and those who edited the book and compiled it, they kind of go back and forth between the tweets and the blogs within the subjects being taught. So here we go. The first chapter is God and Man. So the first thing that he says is, there is nothing to fear except God. But why should we fear someone, he's calling God here a someone, who is absolutely good? Why do we have fear of someone who is absolutely good? So here he wants to explain, when in English, in Hebrew, it's Yirat Shamayim. Yira is really closer to awe than fear. There's another word for fear, like being afraid of something, is called pachad. But to have fear in the spiritual sense is more like awe. So here he says, why should we fear someone who is absolutely good? To truly fear God means to fear forgetting him. And this is actually given over in Chassidut altogether about what fear is. In the Hebrew sense, again, Yirat Shamayim, the fear of God, but more the awe of God. And in any love relationship, there's a certain amount of awe there. And the fear, though, is doing something that would upset our beloved, doing something that was not appropriate to our beloved. So here he puts it in the language of, to truly fear God means to fear forgetting him, meaning that we should always have an awareness of God's presence in our life. So right at the beginning, he's actually quoting a very, very well-known story in the life of the Baal Shem Tov, where it says there is nothing to fear except God. And this story, especially for those who went through our Baal Shem Tov series, that when the Baal Shem Tov was 5 years old, his father passed away. And his father gave his last will and testament. And he said to him, just remember two things. Do not fear anything or anyone except God, and love every Jew. That was his last will and testament to his son. And truthfully, that shaped the Baal Shem Tov's entire life, those two principles, because he was fearless in beginning a new movement that became known as Chassidut. And it was based on, that's why Chasidut is based on the word chesed, which means to love. So that's how this book begins, that the only fear that we should have is to be distant from God, to forget God's presence in our life all the time. Okay, now the first subchapter is called Living with God. So this is one of his tweets. How can the eye of a hurricane stay calm amid turbulent winds? I think everyone knows that in the eye of the hurricane, it's calm. Around it, it's whirling at 150 miles an hour and doing a lot of destruction. But in the eye of the hurricane, everything seems to be calm. So how can the eye of a hurricane stay calm amid turbulent winds? It stays focused on the Creator, remembering He created the hurricane for a good reason. So I want to tell a Hasidic story close to this idea, that the Seer of Lublin, the Jose of Lublin, one of his top students, he lived around 200 years ago, it was called the Ropchitzer. That was the name of the place where he was, Naphtali of Ropchitz. And one time, there was one of his students, one of the Seer of Lublin's students, who was making a Brit Milah. But it was in a very far away place, and the Jose of Lublin could not travel that far. So he sent Naphtali of Ropchitz. And so he was happy to do what his Rebbe told him. So he's going, and when he leaves his district, and everyone's talking about there's this plague among the animals, and the animals are dying. And the farther he travels, he sees everyone is so consumed with this worry about the animals dying. And okay, so it's getting closer to the time he has to be in this town for the Brit Milah. And all of a sudden, this incredible wind starts, and he can barely walk. And he's like, how am I going to get to the Brit? This is like impossible. And so the farther he went, the worse it got. And then he started to daven that the wind should stop. And the wind stopped. So he makes it for the Brit Milah, and he represents the Seer of Lublin. He comes back, and he's very happy. He was sent to do a mission. He did the mission, and when he gets back, before he can say anything, the Seer of Lublin said, "Why did you pray to stop the wind? Do you have any idea how much I prayed for that wind in order that it would take away the germs that were causing this plague among the cattle?" And he said to the Ropchitzer, he said, don't ever pray for something like that if you don't know what the wind is doing. So I have to say that reminded me of this story, that how can the eye of the storm stay calm when everything around it is like havoc, it's destruction? Because the eye knows intrinsically, might not understand why this hurricane is doing such damage, but he knows that for some reason, God is determined that this hurricane should happen. That's what keeps the eye of the hurricane quiet. So this is this. It sounds like a very simple teaching, but what Rav Ginsburgh is trying to give over, and especially these last 2.5 years, where there's been such tragedy in Israel, so many tests, so many tribulations, so many questions. And yet, if we had eyes to see, we would see the bigger picture of how redemption is playing itself out. We might not like the way it's playing itself out or understand it, but there certainly is a realization that everything that is happening somehow for a reason, and in the end, there'll be a good ending. Okay, now the first of the longer, that was like a tweet. Now the next one is called Falling in Love with God. So he says like this. Now here, immediately you'll see the humor that is coming through what he's saying. So he says, if you're dreaming and want to wake up, fall backwards. Just to be on the safe side, make sure there's something soft behind you. Free falling in a dream is a good sign. Don't worry, you won't crash. You'll wake up first. God's hand is there to catch you. Fall into it. Why do we say to fall in love? To experience true love, one must fall from the heights of one's ego. Egocentricity leaves no room for love. The English verb to fall comes from the Hebrew verb nafal. Rav Ginsburgh does this very often, where he knows enough about linguistics that many words in English come from Hebrew. So here he's saying that the word to fall comes from nafal, to fall, which bears the same meaning. In Hebrew, this word is cognate to the word for wonder, because the pei and the lamed of nafal is connected to the word for wonder, which is called pella. By witnessing wonders in nature and in our lives, we fall in love with our Creator. So again, he's talking in a very kind of playful way, but he's saying very deep things here. He's really questioning, why do we use such an expression, to fall in love? Usually falling means you hurt yourself. You fall off balance. Maybe you don't get up. So here he's explaining that to fall in love means that a person has to fall away from their egocentric way of seeing the world. Because to let someone else into your life takes a lot of selflessness. So that's one of the ideas he's saying. And the other thing is he's trying to say that to fall from one's egocentricity opens us up to see the wonders of creation. Because if a person walks around and thinking the whole world surrounds me, rotates around me, they're not going to be open to really sensing the beauty and the wonder of creation. So Rav Ginsburgh says, by witnessing wonders in nature and in our lives, we fall away from egocentricity and we fall in love with our Creator. Now, he's actually giving over a very important teacher from Maimonides, the Rambam. And the Rambam says in the beginning of Mishnah Torah, if you want to know about God, look at his creation. If you want to be close to God, when you see the wonders of creation, you will come to love God. So really, Rabbi Ginsburgh is, without quoting it, is really explaining what the Rambam meant when he said, if you want to know God, look at his creation. And if you look at his creation, you'll come to love God. So that was the first one. What I suggest is, as you all know, we do a discussion group afterwards. We'll be dealing with many, many different ideas there. So if anyone wants to just jot down some question or comment about any of these, because we're going to be kind of jumping from idea to idea. But all of this is under what's called God and man. So the next one that we're going to do is called being close with God. It's a little bit of a longer one, but it's well worth it. The sign of having done a good deed is feeling close to God. Feeling far and estranged from God is a sign of having done something wrong. So here, again, it's very deep concepts, but he's saying them very, very simply. Feeling close to God is when you do good. That's when you feel close to God. But if you're doing something wrong, you're not going to feel close to God at that moment. He continues, the 11th of the 13 principles of faith written by Maimonides is faith in reward and punishment. This is one of the 13 principles that we believe that God has instituted or encoded in creation, reward and punishment. There is the reward and punishment of the future in the world to come, but there is also immediate reward and punishment in this world. Feeling close to the Almighty or feeling far and estranged from him. One is reward, the other is punishment. There is what he says is so beautiful here. There is no better feeling than the former, meaning feeling close to God and doing good things, and no feeling worse than the latter, of knowing that you're doing wrong and feeling far away from God. He continues, if a person does a mitzvah, a commandment of the Torah, a well-defined good deed, here you see he's going out of his way to make sure everyone knows even the most basic terms. So a person does a mitzvah and still feels far from God, the commander of the mitzvah. It must be that either he performed the mitzvah by rote as a matter of habit, or that some egocentric motive entered his consciousness while doing it. Because if you're doing a mitzvah and a good deed, it should lead to feeling close to God. But if it doesn't, you have to look at, well, how did I do this mitzvah? Did I do it in the right way? Did I just what's called knock it off without any real kavana, any real intent to it? Performing a mitzvah for its own sake, for the purpose of fulfilling God's will and completing one's mission in life, will always bring with it a sense of closeness to God. Everyone, I hope, including myself, should remember this. Because we want to feel close to God. We want to feel we're doing good. But we have to make the effort. We can't do it just by rote and routine. Sometimes you might experience a momentary high after performing a mitzvah, but then comes a fallen spirit. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidut, explains that this is because the high was nothing but a sense of self-satisfaction, not true joy in having merited to do good in God's service. Here is such an important teaching in Chassidut, that if we feel good, he calls it, you feel high after doing a mitzvah, and then we fall, it must mean that in the deepest way, we weren't really doing it as part of our service of God. We were doing it more because I wanted the high feeling. I wanted to feel good about myself. He continues, the sense of self-gratification that comes almost automatically with the performance of a mitzvah is likened to the venom of a snake biting your heel. The heel symbolizes the end of the deed. So what this is based on is after the snake convinces Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so there's consequences, reward and punishment. So the snake gets his punishment, really his consequence for what he did. The Eve and Adam, everyone got their consequence, but one of the consequences for human beings is that the snake will bite your heel. And there's a lot of discussion, well, what does that mean? Because it's symbolic. So the Baal Shem Tov explains what Rabbi Ginsburgh just said, and I'll read it again. The sense of self-gratification that comes almost automatically with the performance of a mitzvah is likened to the venom of a snake biting your heel. The heel symbolizes the end of the deed. So in other words, you do a good deed, and then you feel self-satisfaction. You feel pride. That's like the snake biting your heel, because that's the end of the mitzvah, is if you do it for the service of God, then you'll feel really good, and there won't be a lot of ego there. But if you do it for self-gratification, that's like the snake biting your heel at the end of the deed. Now he finishes. So don't confuse the false, impure sense of self-gratification with the true, pure sense of feeling close to God. Closeness to God is gratifying, but it isn't about me being close to him. It's about him being close to me. Very, very deep idea, because we are usually thinking in the mode of, I want to get close to God. Now, of course, that's true, and we want that. We want to get close to God. But here he's saying that if there's too much emphasis on me getting close to God, that actually prevents us from getting close to God. So here he turns it around and he said it's more about our acting in a way that God will feel close to us, which then we will feel. We will feel. I hope everyone can appreciate the simpleness of the language, but the depths of the ideas that are being given over here. Okay, now, again, this is just the way the people put this book together. This is not necessarily in any order that Rabbi Ginsburgh gave it over. This is just, again, the compilers that did a fantastic job in compiling according to subjects. So the next one is a short tweet. Says, someone defined meditation as, and then he puts in quotes, conscious utilization of one's attention. I usually make it even simpler. Focused thought. That is what meditation is. Focused thought. It could be that one meditates for 10 minutes or a half an hour or an hour or 10 seconds, like during prayer or when doing a mitzvah. And we just focus intensely, that becomes a meditation. So Rav Ginsburgh again says, someone defined meditation as conscious utilization of one's attention. So then Rav Ginsburgh says, divine meditation is paying attention to God. Just very few words, but a very deep thought. Divine meditation is paying attention to God. So in a different place, Rav Ginsburgh explains that many types of meditation, each in its own way is legitimate, is helpful, but he makes a comment that there's types of meditation that are more intensely focused on the self, on understanding the self. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't misquote me. There's nothing wrong with a type of meditation where we concentrate on the different levels of the soul or my purpose in the world or whatever. But Rav Ginsburgh says that in general, most Jewish meditation is focused on God awareness and not so much self-awareness. So that's why he says here, divine meditation is paying attention to God. Now, obviously, one needs to have a certain level of consciousness to be aware of God. And that consciousness is coming from the self. But he's just pointing out that, again, I'm using the word in general, the idea of Jewish meditation is being more focused on what we can learn about God, what we can learn about the Torah, God's will, what we could learn about how we can allow God to feel close to us, and not so much how can we feel close to God. Okay, the next one is a very important one because it's based on the passage after the Shema. After the Shema, so we say, V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol lebavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol ma'odecha. And you shall love God, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. So here, Rav Ginsburgh is going to delve a bit into explaining what does it mean to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all of your might. So he says like this, there are three levels of love, with your whole heart, with your whole soul, with your whole might. Loving with your heart means to love with both your inclinations, the good and the evil. And that's why levavcha is actually in the plural, even though in English we translate it with your heart as if one heart. But just like the heart has two ventricles, these are understood to be the good inclination and the evil inclination. And yet we should learn to love God with both of them. It also means to love with both sides of your heart, right and left. Today, the right means conservative, and the left means liberal. Conservative love is to love as my fathers did, my ancestors did, from tradition. From them, I learned to love God because it is a mitzvah. Liberal love is spontaneous. It is love at first sight, because I love, not because I was told to. Love with all your heart. So here he means you have the right side of the heart and the left side of the heart. The right side of the heart is to love God based on here Jewish tradition, everything for 4,000 years that we have learned of how to love God, how to love his Torah, how to love every Jew, how to love every human being, how to love all of creation. But that we learn from tradition. But he says The left is more a kind of spontaneous love where I love because I want to love, not because I was told this is what I should think or how I should feel. So he's saying that's what it means to love God with all your heart, means with both of these kinds of love. Next is loving with all your soul. He says loving with all your soul refers to situations that demand self-sacrifice. It means devoting your life to your beloved, so much so that you would donate your organs to save their life. By devoting your life to God, you save his life, as it were. Meaning that when we give to God, we have to believe that it's like affecting God. It's good for God, as it were. God's life refers to the revelation of his presence on earth, his life among us. If God's presence disappears, it's though he has passed away. He depends on us to keep him here with us in our consciousness. So this, I have to say, is a very Hasidic type of thought, because in a more called normalized kind of Jewish thought, God is perfect. He has no need for human beings. He has no need for anything. God is omnipotent. He is infinite. And he doesn't need anything. And of course, there's a great truth to that. Nonetheless, Hasidic thought, I remember, I think it was Avraham Yoshua Heschel said that in a certain way, this kind of attitude is, in a certain way, what I'm trying to find the right word here, is sanitizing God in such a way as if there's no connection. God doesn't need us. God doesn't need anything. But when we look at the words of the prophets, we see that God does care, that we do affect God. And that's why the sages say, for example, that God cries every day over the destruction of the temple. Now, we don't understand this. These are human words about human emotions. But here, Rav Ginsburgh is saying a very, very deep idea here, is that we're going to learn, I don't think we're going to get to tonight, 4 different reasons why God created the world. And one of them, the most enigmatic, is that God wanted a dwelling place in the lower worlds. So that's what Rav Ginsburgh is saying, is through our actions, our selflessness, our willing to give our souls to God and be connected to God in that way, that is what is allowing God to have his presence in the world. That is what God desires. God had a desire to have a dwelling place in the lower worlds. Next, loving with all your might means to love with all your wealth, with all your resources, all the resources that you've acquired through life. This is how the sages explain with all of your might, means with all of your resources. So he says, the sages explain that for some, it is harder to give up their wealth than their very lives. Rather die rich than living poor. Loving God with all your might reveals his very essence. not just his life force. First, you become nothing, empty. Then you become part of his absolute being. To love means to give. We must be ready to give all we have, our hearts, soul, and might, to our beloved. If we really love, it's easy. That's what he says. That's how he ends it. It's easy after you've done all of the hard work. That's my comment. We know this, it's easy to love, but sometimes it takes a lot of hard work before and especially afterwards to keep that love going. L'chaim, everyone, l'chaim. Actually, this light is shining in my eyes. I'm having a hard time to read. Okay, the next one is called Seeing God Everywhere. The essence of now here, what he's going to give over in, 3 little paragraphs is the basis of his book, Living in Divine Space, where he explains what he calls the most fundamental of all Jewish meditations. Here he's doing it in 3 little paragraphs. So I'll try to explain it a little bit more, this idea. So he says the essence of Jewish meditation is the soul's concentrated effort to search for and find God in every experience of our lives. Every verse, every word, and every letter in the Torah is a divine portal through which we can see the Almighty's infinite light. I hope we all appreciate how deep that paragraph is. So much so I'm going to read it again. The essence of Jewish meditation is the soul's concentrated effort to search for and find God in every experience of our lives. Every verse, every word, and every letter of the Torah is a divine portal through which we can see the Almighty's infinite light. This is why people dedicate their lives to learning Torah day and night, is because each word, verse, mitzvah, story is a portal, is a channel to connect to God's infinite light. He continues, God is all around you, present in all 6 spatial directions. Turn your inner eye upward and see divine providence in your life. Turn it downward and negate the existence of any power but God. Turn to your right and experience the love that resides in your heart, in your heart's right side. Turn to the left and experience the fear in your heart, in your heart's left side. Turn to your front. There is an experience of unity, while to your back is purity of thought. So here I have to explain. These are the 6 directions, of course, that we shake lulav. And these 6 directions and these 6 emotions that Rav Ginsburgh just explained, each one of them is connected to one of what's called the 6 continual mitzvahs. So that's what he said. When he first said, he said, when you look up, this is the mitzvah of belief in God. When you look down, this is the mitzvah. These are the first 2 of the 10 commandments. To be aware and believe in God. The second one is to have no other gods other than God. Turning to the right means the love of God. To the left is the fear and awe of God. down below is to excuse me, and be in front of you is the unity of God. That's the Shema. And behind you is to stay away from negative thoughts. These are the 6 continual mitzvot. And here Rav Ginsburgh is saying this is how we become aware of God's presence in our life all the time, by doing this meditation on these 6 continual mitzvot. To believe in God, to have no other gods but God, the unity of God, the love of God, the awe and fear of God, and disconnecting from negative thoughts. So now his last paragraph. You are I'm going to mention, because I know that many people here listen to or watch Y.Y. Jacobson's videos. They're phenomenal. I suggest everyone does. He makes the same point in almost every single video that he makes, what Rav Ginsburgh is saying here. Why? It's just because this is a basic Hasidic concept. So Rav Ginsburgh says, you are an emissary of God on earth, entrusted with bringing his light and goodness to all. You do this through meditation and by walking in his ways. An emissary must be faithful to the one that sent him on his individual mission. Try to hear how your name is being called from on high, directing you to act. So this is a very basic concept. The Baal Shem Tov, I wouldn't say that he initiated it, but he emphasized it greatly, that our purpose in this world is to bring light and healing and rectification to everyone and in every circumstances that we can. And it's called being an emissary. That's why in Chabad, when the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent someone out to set up a new Chabad house or a Chabad institution, they're called shluchim. They're messengers, they're emissaries of the Rebbe. The Rebbe empowered, even today, the Rebbe has been gone for over 30 years now. But everyone who goes out is still going out on the power of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So this, in 3 paragraphs, he tried to give over the essence of almost everything that Judaism stands for, and the most basic meditation of how we can feel God's presence. I'm going to say it one more time. By being aware of having faith and belief in God, having no other powers or gods in our life, to be constantly aware of the unity of God, to be aware of loving God, having awe and fear of God, and to work endlessly to stay positive and shield ourselves from negativity. Okay, we're kind of running out of time, so I want to pick maybe one more short one. Okay, so this is a short one, but again, here you're going to see Rav Ginsburgh is explaining one of the most important foundations of Jewish thought and Kabbalistic thought, but he does it in almost a playful way. He says, God is referred to mainly by 2 names. One is the 4-letter name of God. Sometimes we use the word Hashem or Havaya, a Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey, and the name Elohim. So he says The name of Hashem is the manifestation of God's transcendence. The name Elohim is the manifestation of his immanence. So here we're told that God manifests in two ways simultaneously. It's not two different, just because they're two different names, it's all one God. But God manifests sometimes as being transcendent, beyond time, beyond space, beyond everything. That's the four-letter name of God. But that four-letter name of God also appears in this world. And the name Elohim has the same numerical value as nature. He's going to point that out. And that is God's immanence. In other words, everywhere we look is God's fingerprints. That's the name Elohim. So he goes on. God's transcendence manifests as miracles. God's immanence as nature. They are one. And so here what he's saying is, we tend to think of miracles that's like apples and nature is oranges. Why? Nature works according to clockwork. It just runs in perfect synchronicity. But the idea here is, if we really understood nature, we'd see how miraculous it is. There's a whole field of science now that it's called the anthropic principle, where they have shown in like 1,000 different ways that if the laws of nature were different, even an iota, not only could life not exist, but what we call reality, nature, couldn't exist either. The smallest changes in the laws of nature would throw everything off to such a degree that atoms couldn't form, molecules couldn't form, cells couldn't form, the whole thing. So that's what he says. God's transcendence manifests as miracles. His immanence as nature. They are one. The laws of nature are the nature of the world. The custom is no more, the costume is no more than a costume. Elohim is Hashem's costume. To truly experience God, you need to see through the costume. So let me explain what he does, what he's not saying here, because he's trying, again, he's trying to give it over in general to people who might not have the background. So he's, in most cases, he's not getting into like high Kabbalah here. But here he is explaining high Kabbalah. Why? Is because if you take the gematria of the vessel of God, here he's using the word costume. Elohim is the costume of God. And he's saying, but you have to see through the costume in order to see God. So the vessel of God, meaning Kli Yud Ke Vav Ke, the vessel of the four-letter name of God equals exactly the name Elohim. And the vessel of Elohim, Kli Elohim, equals exactly Olam, the world. So here he's just saying that there's an immanent manifestation of God and there's a transcendent. But ultimately, they are linked together. And ultimately, the deeper you look into nature and the laws of nature, the more miraculous you see, the more transcendent wisdom do you see in what we might call secular knowledge or science. but he's saying it's all coming from God, and it's all one. So that's a good place to end our first session. As I said, this is it's been a delight for me to prepare these ideas, to see how simply you can state such deep ideas, because truthfully, I'm used to learning from Rabbi Ginsburgh when he's teaching to people who know the Kabbalistic jargon, who know the Hasidic jargon. And so this is such a delight to see how Rabbi Ginsburgh is taking these deep ideas, and also like a costume, he's dressing them up in seemingly very sparse wording and giving over such deep ideas. I hope everyone will continue to learn these ideas with us.